Well, folks, I'm here at Uracco Coffee in downtown Shelton with the new mayor of Shelton, Sharon Sherman. How are you?
I'm so good.
So earlier this year, you were, I guess in a sense, nominated by your fellow council members. As every couple years or so, the process gets updated and changed.
2 years.
Every 2 years,
Yep.
a new mayor comes into town and a deputy mayor as well. That's Lindsay Sapp. So you were, your name was put forth by council member George Blush.
Right.
And then the process goes, the council votes on it.
Right. Yeah.
Very cool.
I wasn't really expecting it, so I was a little shocked, but here we are.
So you have just started your second term,
Yes.
but kind of first full term as a council member, is that right?
So I had a full first term.
Okay.
And then so it was basically the first day of my second term when this all kind of transpired. Yeah.
So the mayor is an interesting position here in Shelton as it's closely with the other council members. And it's not like maybe what you would see in a big city, you know, mayor kind of people vote on
Right.
person for mayor. Here in Shelton, we vote on the council members.
Right.
And the council members then choose the mayor like they chose Sharon here. So what does that mean for, I guess, the vote of confidence with your fellow council members that you're going to take up this new moniker as the mayor?
So the thing that's interesting about the mayor system here, in my opinion, is we all still have the exact same amount of authority.
Right.
It's all exactly the same. And people get that a little bit confused because then you've got this title now and you're not just a council member. But really, the mayor's job is to run the meeting. And the deputy mayor runs the meeting when the mayor's not there. So the mayor themselves cannot, you know, make a new ruling. In fact, they can't even make a motion themselves. So when people are like, oh, you're going to change the world. No, you need the majority of the vote.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's still pretty much the same.
You know, you bring that up, and I find that to be one of the most fascinating parts of kind of governmental structure and how it all works. People on the outside, and it's a very energetic community that comes in and watches the briefings and watches the meetings, and if they're not there in person, they watch it on Mason Web TV or on the City of Shelton's YouTube channel. But I think a lot of folks say, well, yeah, like you said, you're the mayor now, and so you're changing all these rules.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of process. You know, they say government moves slowly.
Oh, it's molasses.
And this is kind of talk to me a little bit about that process. I mean, it's a lot different than people might expect how quickly things can move.
Right. So I know so many people who, when they're going to run, they say, oh, I'm going to change this, this, and this. And they think the first month they get in, you're going to change the world. I wish that was true. That would be amazing. However, there's so many rules and processes. And one thing that people need to understand is we can't change state law.
Right.
So state law supersedes anything we want to do. So if it doesn't follow along with state law guidelines, it's kiboshed before you get start, really.
Sure. And
So,
who's the
right.
person that, so whether or not you put that forward and then somebody looks and goes, oh no, state law says this.
Well, luckily
Who's
we
the
have a
person?
city manager who
Okay, that's the
pretty
city
much
manager.
knows that. And then
Yeah.
we also have a city attorney if there's a question on whether something's legal or not.
Right, okay, so that's how that
Right.
works. You can put out the idea and say, let's study it a little bit and figure
yes.
out whether or not it's legal
Right.
based on the state
Yeah,
laws.
and what you can do. And so sometimes, you know, you'll come in with this really grand idea. They're like, no, you can't do that. So what you want to do at that point is kind of scale it down. Okay, but what can we do to go in that direction that we are allowed to do?
Yeah.
And then we have open discussions in our study sessions, which are the opposite Tuesdays of the city council meetings. We can have those open discussions. And then the different sections, you know, public works and parks and all the others, they can come on and brief us on what projects they're doing, where they're at, and we can openly ask them questions and have a dialogue. Whereas in the city council meetings, it's
You got to follow the agenda.
right. You follow the agenda, and then whoever's briefing briefs you, and that's pretty much it. It's not an open dialogue. And another thing with that is when people do public comment during our actual city council meetings, we love that because we need to hear the concerns of the community, and they have 3 minutes to say that. However, we're not allowed to respond.
Right.
And a lot of people don't understand that. And they'll ask a question, and we have to just sit there. And so I really want people to know that we do care. We're just not allowed to respond at that moment.
So if somebody brings up a question and you want to answer but you can't, what do you do after the meeting or in between before the next meeting to either find an answer for that citizen or then bring it back and respond? Can you respond afterwards?
Yeah, you can. After the meeting, you can respond. A lot of times it is helpful to have the city manager kind of there with you to make sure you're not accidentally telling them the wrong thing.
Right.
Because we're not going to know every rule and regulation in the world. We can say what we know is going on. We can say, okay, we know we're moving in this direction. However, we have to be careful what we say too, because if we're wrong, then that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
So we usually will go over to Mark and be like, all right, Mark, here's the question they posed. And then he will usually help us understand it. Now, sometimes there's a situation where we really don't know, right? And so he'll be like, give me your email, we will get back to you. And then they'll send him an email saying, this is what we found out.
Mark's been at the city forever. I think 30 years maybe, if
Something
not
like
more.
that, yeah.
What's it like to have someone with that kind of institutional knowledge helping navigate? Because sometimes these positions come
Right.
in and out and you're
Yes.
new and then you're out and there's a new
Yeah.
person coming in.
I think we're really lucky to have somebody who knows pretty much every department within the city.
Right.
That's really handy, because when you bring somebody in from a different community and then all of a sudden say, here's your job, learn everything about everyone in every position right now, that's tough to do. He's been here for so long, he kind of knows the workings. He knows almost everybody who's been there. He knows the strengths and weaknesses, in my opinions, of the people who've been there too.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really important, as you know, he's kind of a leadership role there to know, you know, who you can ask for this, that, and the other thing, and who's going to give you the correct answers. And I think we're really lucky to have somebody with all that time in our community and in that position.
You have a great shop downtown, right on Railroad, right in front of everything that's going on in the town pretty much. What do you see, going back to the very first time you decided to run and then your continuation in this term, on what you see within the parameters like we were talking about of what the city can do? Let's just tick down this list. Small business and small business support. What are some additional things that you'd like to see the city be able to accomplish for small businesses?
Honestly, for small businesses now, this is kind of a hot topic, but we have some storefronts right in the downtown area that maybe aren't being utilized.
Right.
And I would really like to see them come back to life. And not only will it bring more people downtown to shop, because people want to shop from shop to shop. They don't want to just go to one store and then leave, right?
Yeah.
They want to walk down the street and go to this shop and then, you know, get an ice cream and go to the next shop. I'd really love to see the downtown area where the shops are open, and then there's a different ways to go about that. I mean, and another thing is, if those businesses aren't open, they're not bringing the tax revenue to our community, which we desperately need.
Right.
And just all the way down to a pothole in the road, sometimes we have to make those decisions. Where are the priorities? You know, we have to pay for those things. So if we're not bringing in the tax revenue, we can't pay to do those things. And something I like to remind people, because, you know, you get these, people will be like, "Ooh, we really need a splash pad." Yes, that would be lovely.
It would be a lot of fun.
It would be so great. But we need to take care of the basics before we can take care of the desires.
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
what I mean?
right.
And so how do we do that? Well, we have to have open businesses, because the tax revenue generates that money to handle the basics. And if we had enough businesses generating all that money, then maybe we could go above and beyond. But right now, we're kind of in survival mode, really.
So it's kind of, I mean, free market and all that good stuff. Landlords can charge whatever they want when it comes to rent. But if there are these vacant storefronts,
Yeah.
is that a conversation you can have with them to say, look, we appreciate you wanting to make money on your property, but either what we're hearing for rent does not bear out on the market, or obviously it's been empty for months or years. So is there some wiggle room to kind of let people in? How do you kind of let people do what they do in the free
Right.
market?
You don't want to over control, right? So in our community, it's not so much, in my experience, the overrent. It's the absentee owner.
Okay.
And so
that's people that own the building or the property, but they live elsewhere.
yeah, or they don't really care anymore. It's an asset to them.
Sure.
And so it's not a really big deal to them because it's not affecting their daily life.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of the problem is, somebody owns that building and it's an asset to them, so they don't really care if it's contributing to the downtown. And so, there are some places, some towns are actually, saying, hey, you need to utilize that storefront or that area, or perhaps you can pay a fee to kind of compensate for where the taxes we might have gotten, right?
Yeah,
so some communities are doing that.
Sure.
And we haven't gotten there yet, but I'm not opposed to learning about it.
Okay. That's interesting, and probably a definite way that the property owners would take a look, a little closer look, as opposed to, well, wait a second, I'm not getting anything. I have to pay a little bit,
Right.
or I lower the rent maybe a little bit, or figure out some way to bring somebody in.
Yeah.
Because the downtown has become more vibrant. There are more shops opening, but there are, like you said, there are pockets where they're not. So the next one, let's go down the list, is kind of the homeless issue that we see. A lot of that has been talked about primarily in the kind of Brewer Park area, but business owners do see homeless sleeping on the stoops every so often, and it causes some folks a concern whether or not they should come downtown safety-wise or things like that. And this, again, is a real tough one when it comes to navigating perhaps the wants of the council versus the city, state, and federal laws.
Correct. You've got that. It's tough. As you know, my business is right downtown. I literally can see Brewer Park from my window. So I'm in the heart of it. And so it's a concern. I will say we're doing better.
Sure.
So there was a point that it was worse, and we've done what we can do up to this point. And I think proactive is going to be the way we need to be, instead of being reactive in those situations where, maybe there's a bunch of people sleeping in the park and they shouldn't be, because we have rules and regulations that says, you can't stay in the park, you can't live in the park, you can't camp in the park, things like that. So we need to, number one, enforce them, obviously. Number two, be a little more proactive. And so instead of waiting for that call, do a drive-by. Make sure it's okay. I believe that's something that our police department is working on. However, just like with everybody else, they're low on staff, right?
Well, they're low on staff, and if they're going to fine or arrest somebody, there's no room at the jail.
Right.
So how do you,
well,
you're like, well, I guess.
In a lot of situations, you don't have to fine or arrest somebody for that. You just say, hey, look, you can't be here, and give them resources. So we have so many resources in our community. And Lindsay Sapp brought a nice list yesterday that we can pass out to the officers and the court system with all the different resources. And there's hundreds of them on there. Be like, here are some options. Maybe they can find you a bed. There's different things. And, we have free transit.
Right.
And there are more opportunities for those types of things in Kitsap County and in Thurston County. And I know there's a lot of people who say, oh, well, you're taking them away from their home. If there's a bed available and we don't have a bed available and we can get them there for free, if it was me, I'd want to take that bed for the night. You can take that bus back if you need to, right? So that's just, it's another real controversial issue. But there are options, and it's not always arrest. Obviously, that very seldomly actually happens. Usually, we're like, you know what, you can't stay here. It's not fair to the local business owners. The neighbors next door, are not comfortable with this. It's time for you to move along, and usually they will move along.
It seems like over the last couple years, a few different police chiefs have come in and out of the city, and Chief Kostad now is doing another great job of being visible. I see him out walking around with some of his fellow officers during the day. That partnership too with the sheriff's office, because of the county government right close as well. So those types of visibilities, like you're saying, being a little more proactive definitely helps. One thing I'm interested in learning kind of maybe goes back to the small business conversation we were having, but it is the fact that Shelton is also the county seat, and there's so much property utilized by the county that also is not receiving tax benefits for the city. How do you? I mean, is that just kind of that ship has sailed?
I don't know how they handle that. I mean, if they buy a building to use for their building services, I don't know if we can regulate that. There are pros and cons to, county will maintain their buildings. Right?
Sure, right.
So there's that. There's some good things to it. However, that's not bringing in tax revenue, obviously. You can't use Building 10, which is now a courthouse, to sell furniture anymore.
Yep.
That used to bring tax revenue in.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think that we should control, you can't, buy that building, but maybe we can zone it, perhaps. Okay. You know what I mean? And that's a possibility. We do have different zones. We have like a historical zone, and now we have an art district, and we have different zones. Maybe that's something we need to hone in on,
Let's talk a little bit more about just the city in general and being the mayor. I would assume then at the beginning of each year, everybody kind of looks at their, I don't want to say committee assignments, but the different boards that they go on. And a lot of times you pick the board because you're passionate about that issue. What are the boards that you're on, and what can we talk about that?
So for me, because I'm also a business owner, I'm passionate about all of it. Like, if I could go to all the meetings, I would. And I believe that the previous mayor felt the same way too. But I am a business owner, and I have to work my job too. Yeah. So I can't go to all of them, which it's not, we all need to divvy it up anyways. So right now I'm on the Criminal Justice Task Force, which is really interesting. We've got judges in there. We've got Department of Corrections who comes in there. We've got local sheriff's office. And so we get together early in the morning, and they let us know basically, if somebody's being released from prison into our area. Because a lot of times what happens is they're released from the prison, and maybe they're not from here, but they end up with a residence here somehow. Okay. And they want us to know what that is and what to kind of look out for, which is, I think, really kind of handy for our community.
I guess sometimes if someone's incarcerated down the way here, their nearest family members might find a spot to make that transit easier for visitation.
Historically, that has happened, yes.
And then that's when they're out and they have a landing spot.
They also have in every community, but us too, we have buildings or organizations that it's almost like a halfway house. Like, when you get out, you're being supervised, you're learning how to be part of society again, and we have those here too. So I'm assuming that sometimes there would be an opening. And let's be honest, if you were committing crimes in Tacoma and the people that you knew lived in Tacoma, and maybe you don't want to go back to that, maybe it's best for you not to go back to Tacoma, to go back to that lifestyle, right? Yeah. Or wherever it may be, however. So maybe it's better for you to be in a different environment where you can make new friends and recreate yourself, because that's the whole idea of being incarcerated, right? Yeah. So there's pros and cons to that. At that point, you hope they're trying to better themselves. And so we have to give them the benefit of the doubt until proven otherwise. So
let's talk a little bit about residential living here in Shelton. And there's a lot of residential neighborhoods being built up. Expansion plans on some of those are already in the works to bring even more homes. What are some different ways the city is looking at making investment in residential and investment in business, I guess, too, a little more attractive to outside interests who, for whatever reason over the years, have overlooked Shelton as a destination?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure exactly why. Maybe it's because we're just not on the I-5 corridor, is what I'm assuming, because that's easy access. And so, my goodness, I don't know how many times I feel like I'm beating a drum. I'm like, we need a hotel. Well, now we're getting one, but it's still not in the city limits. Yeah. And it's still not going to draw the tax revenue for the city residents, which is what we really need. I'm glad that we're getting one, because we need more places for people to stay. This is a wonderful area to visit. Right. We have so many activities. Yeah. We have all the festivals that we have on top of the ridges at the edge of town. There's so much going on. So we do have some things that are really interesting that we've put into play in the past few years. is we used to have rules about how high you could build.
Sure, yeah.
Not anymore, as long as you're structurally sound. I mean, the International Builders Code has rules and regulations about safety, obviously, as they should. But at this point, if you want to go way up and you can afford to go way up, please, by all means. And so that could give you, instead of buying massive amounts of land, you could go up.
Yeah.
You could do businesses on the bottom and you could do apartments on top. We would actually love more of that kind of situation in this community.
We see a lot of that in downtown Olympia has been doing a lot of that with the storefronts on the bottom and 4 or 5 stories on top of residential.
And we're a great place
as
for
soon
that.
as you see those, another one's coming up and they're already full. I mean, it's
right,
amazing.
exactly. And so we really are kind of encouraging that, getting the investors to come here and do that. Do you know anyone?
No, but I'll do some outreach if you need to. Come to Shelton, it's beautiful. Talk to the EDC, they know all about what's going on.
Absolutely.
One thing you just mentioned there was the height, and there are international or national codes. What are some things that you think the city could do to help, I guess, permitting in a sense, but kind of not put any extra barriers on city regulations when state or federal guidelines are good enough?
Right. I hear what you're saying. However, we need to make sure that what you're building works for our community.
Okay.
So we want this to be a walkable community too. We don't want everybody to rely on a car.
Sure.
So if your building front is over a certain amount of square feet, and I don't remember the number, and I don't want to be quoted wrong, but there is a number, and if it's over that amount, then you do have to put in a sidewalk, because the idea is we want to make this community better for pedestrians in the long run. So if you're building a whole community, yes, you need to put in sidewalks, but it's going to make it safer, and that ideally it would keep less cars on the road because you could walk. So let's say you're going to build up above Neyland Park.
Sure.
Because there's a whole area there that could be built.
Yep.
That park is at the bottom of the hill. So that's where the kids are going to want to go. The families are going to want to go. There's a little dog park there. You need to make it accessible, because like right now, there's not a sidewalk up that hill.
No,
so it's not really a safe way to get up that hill. We need to make it better for the people who are moving here and the people who live here, instead of just saying, yeah, you can do whatever, because that's not really fair in the future to anyone. So is it a little more expensive? Yeah, a little more pavement is a little more expensive. I understand that, but it's going to be better for everybody in the long run.
So the city council meets on Tuesdays. There's either the regular meetings or there's study sessions. The study sessions are open too, right?
Right, study sessions are open to the public.
Yeah. So you can come down to the Civic Center and check those out. They're also available on the city's YouTube channel, and Mason Web TV does a good job of posting that information as well.
Yeah.
New mayor to the city of Shelton, Sharon Sherman. Thanks for some time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.